My report begins on page 3. I'm hoping you've read that, but if you haven't, I want to encourage you to take the time to go back and take a look at that. And one of the things I want you to know is we are here to help. And that's not just something we're saying. You find yourself in a difficult situation, please contact us. Contact us day or night. I will say I encourage you to contact us as soon as possible, though. And usually we're able to help sometimes a whole lot more effectively the quicker we're aware of situations and able to come in and assist you with that. I also encourage you to take advantage of all of our national agencies. And so you'll notice, especially during the period of COVID, how good a job our guys did, our agencies did by providing resources. And so please take advantage of that. And we encourage you to do everything that you can to support them. One of the things that you can do to support them and then be aware of their resources is to subscribe to the NAFWB News. How many of you subscribe or get this email every other week? All right, good job. So we want you to get it, but we also want the folks in your churches to get it. And so they can just go to nafwb.org/news. They can sign themselves up. They'll get an email to confirm so that it knows they're not a robot and it's not spam. And they'll get information every other Thursday about what's happening in the denomination. Now, one of the things that happens is being part of a denomination, you have 501c3 status. And so you can go to nafwb.org and you can show someone that in the directory. Notice that's also the mechanism the IRS uses to know that you're part of us. And I need to give a shout out to Senator Marcia Blackburn. We've had a couple of difficulties, actually a problem that went on for almost a year and a third. It was before the time of COVID, and she and her office came to our aid and helped us. And I'll say it's a whole lot easier to do something like that as a denomination than for individual churches to do. So remember that, you folks that are in Tennessee, we do appreciate what she and her office did. And so if you get a chance, reach out to her and let her know that. Folks are increasingly looking online, though, to get information. And so with the directory, they can type in a zip code, they can type in a city, and they can learn which churches are there. We encourage you not to just use this for tax purposes, but to use this as an outreach purpose. And one way to do that is by giving us a picture of your church, giving us a short little video about your church, a little description of your church, and every church has that, and it increases your online presence. And the more online presence you have, often the more that helps you across the span in the web where people notice you when they're looking for a church in your community. As part of that, we've developed a social media plan. So I suspect many of you have subscribed to the Better Together podcast. Every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time, a podcast is dropped. Every Thursday, a podcast is dropped from Better Together as well. But if you go to the NAFWB Facebook site, you will see there an instructional meme about a particular biblical principle that's dropped every Tuesday at 8 Central Time. And then every Thursday, we either give you a direct quote of a verse or summarize a biblical passage. And it's a way of pushing back on some of the negative social media and also trying to engage the 7 out of 10 Americans who are using Facebook today. By the way, we have a similar thing happening at Instagram, and so we encourage you to take advantage of that as well. If you've not liked the NAFWB Facebook page, please do so. That's where our services and this business is being streamed from. We encourage you to like that page, get the information out, or share that information as well. And note there is a Spanish Facebook page as well that mirrors what is offered on the English site. Sometimes with translation it may run a couple of days behind, but if you know someone that speaks Spanish, encourage them to take advantage of that as well. And then please take advantage of the Better Together podcast. Some of those are fun. It's just kind of interesting to see what fellow Free Will Baptists are doing, but in many ways it is of a equipping nature. It's something that people can use. It can be showed as, to help in certain associations or in certain churches, but it's valuable information. And also notice that everything that's on the Better Together podcast site is also shared on the YouTube site. So that's a very popular social media platform as well. Subscribe to that, like that, and share that if you will. Take advantage of our written resources. So we found with a survey, a church survey a couple of years ago, the denominational research team, that the majority of our churches did not have a new member class. So we have one to suggest to you. A couple of years ago, really back in the 70s, Randall House Publications published a little booklet by Dr. Robert Pickerilly called Your Church in You. And so they gave us permission to kind of reformat that, update it just a little bit, and put it out. It's in digital form online at nafwb.org, or we will mail you hard copies if you would like. We also have it in Spanish, and if you'll go to YouTube, you will see that each paragraph is listed and can be used as a particular presentation that someone could watch. You'll notice on nafwb.org that there's also a discussion guide that's been added, and so you can show it if you would like, or have your people read it, and then you can use those discussion questions to talk about how to apply the church covenant. Really, it's applying Scripture to how we behave in the community and what we do at church and so forth. And I know many of you have taken advantage of the Free Will Baptist Catechism. Dr. Paul Harrison did that for us several years ago. And so that's in English, it's in Spanish, it's in French, it's in Portuguese. There's no excuse, really. It's in Japanese too. But anyway, there's hardly no excuse not to take advantage of that and use that. And it's just a good tool that we can use there. For the last several years, we have had the award-winning One Magazine. So if you'll watch on our social media site and on the One Magazine Facebook site, you're going to see from time to time where the Evangelical Press Association recognizes our writers, recognizes many members of our group and the contributions they make. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that. Take advantage of the podcasts that are about some of these articles. Share these articles on social media. Take the hard copy, and after you read it, share it with someone else and let them be able to be blessed by that as well. How many of you participated in the Jeremiah 29 initiative? If you participated, raise your hand. All right, good job. That's all about, we did that during the pandemic last fall, I think you know. We concentrated first of all upon getting in the Word of God. Then we talked about talking to the Lord, then working with our families, and then reaching out to our community. So you could go to nafwb.org. You can see all of those resources. There's electronic resources, there's blogs, there's videos, memes, if you will. All of those items are still there in English and in Spanish. It's really something that I encourage you to utilize and to take advantage of because it can help us. And so as you think of that, think about some of the things your church and your people may be struggling with. I think the Jeremiah 29 initiative can help with that. And I do want to call your attention to one item in my report on page 5. If you look on page 5 and you'll scroll down, in the last paragraph we say, despite our efforts, we'd had a net loss of 46 churches in 2020. And then I said, sometimes I look at this, it's a bit like someone who's in the early stages of cancer. If the person chooses to engage in treatment, they can survive and even thrive. However, if they choose to ignore the illness, they will eventually succumb to the disease, even if they get serious about addressing the illness later on. Or if they have waited too long to address the cancer, they will not survive despite heroic efforts. And so I believe we have a critical window here for Free Will Baptist where we can address our difficulties as a denomination. However, should we fail to do so, no matter what we do, I think we can wait too late and not be able to turn that tide around. So if you heard the moderator's message a moment ago, what he was saying is it's time for us to get serious. And so as a denomination, we want to do that. As individual churches, we want to do that. And we are developing resources to try to assist our churches and our associations and states to be able to push back on this cultural tide that we have and impact our churches and our country. So One of the things I want you to note is what's happening with Refresh, this combined effort with Free Will Baptist North American Ministries. And so the first thing with Refresh is the Better Together podcast. Those materials were purchased by NAM. Dr. Crow said, Eddie, I really think you should have cameras. I said, we don't have money for cameras. We're buying them. NAM will buy them. There would not have been video podcast were it not for Dr. Crow and NAM. That was going to be audio only. We didn't have the resources for that. Imagine what that would have been like during the pandemic. So that's the first thing, was the Better Together podcast. So we're trying to put resources immediately into people's hands. They get something every week, or we should really say ears and eyes, every week that they can use. Now, as part of that, you saw, if you've been watching, we had tech tips from Josh Riggs that went on Thursdays a couple of weeks ago. We have some what you might call writing tips that are coming from Eric Thompson, Off the High Dive, 5 Steps to Better Communication. So those kinds of things often happen on Thursdays. We have other things where Tom Willie is going to be talking about missions in Cuba and so forth. There's all kinds of podcasts like that, a little bit different on Thursdays. The other thing to think about with the Refresh resources is what NAM offers through the boot camp. And so notice the dates on the Pastor Boot Camp, October the 4th. And so I encourage you to go by the NAM booth, talk to Dr. Brad Ransom about that, and take advantage of the resources that are offered through NAM that would help any of our pastors. And then if you've been watching some of that, Dr. Ransom has talked about some of the video resources that are coming. I think he has this in his report, but you will see we talk about accountability, we talk about a little bit of counseling kind of things, all kinds of resources that they're producing, high quality, that people can look at and they can watch and they can utilize, and they're very helpful. Now, we also have the Rekindle coaching, and I'm going to ask all of our Rekindle coaches if they would to stand if you've been trained or if you're in the process of being trained. So stand if you will. All right, good job, guys. So we have, at the end of the middle of September, we will have, Lord willing, 64 coaches that are trained. Our goal is to have 100 coaches, and I know we have more than 100 associations, but our goal is to end up where we have a coach per association. I encourage you to take advantage of the Rekindle coaching. See Dr. Dwyer. You'll see one of our coaches. If you stop by the executive office booth, there are coaches that are there that will talk to you. And don't wait until it's too late. And you may be sitting here and you're a lay person. You go by as well. I think we may actually have more churches we're working with that do not have a pastor than churches that actually do. And so speaking of that, we've made a lot of emphasis on the 126 churches that do not have pastors. We encourage you to take a look at the blogs where we look at that. We're begging our people to pray that God will call men to pastor churches. So people talk a lot about praying for people to be called to preach. We don't have a problem usually filling a pulpit. We do have problems with people that will pastor churches. We need pastors, and we have to have them now. And that 126, that's a lot of churches that will have to have bivocational pastors. I was a bivocational pastor. I think that's a pretty good asset because you begin to learn how to deal with a difficult culture when you're in it every day. And so I think that's actually a good model, and we talk a little bit about that with the blogs. And then we've got to get really serious in our associations. We really want to look as an association at what churches are struggling, what churches need some help, and as an association, just like you do as a pastor or pastoral staff and pastoral leaders, you're trying to help and or intervene and assist churches that are struggling. And sometimes some churches are going to need to merge. Some churches are going to need to do some alternate ways of doing things, and we talk about that in the Creative Strategies blog. Our moderator is working, I think you know, on his dissertation. And so as part of that, he and our coaches and our state promotional guys developed a questionnaire where we ask people that are interested in pastoring churches to complete that. You can use this on their local church level, but I'm straight up saying if you're interested in pastoring, complete that form and send it to me. We will do what we can to try to help find a church for you to pastor. And you'll notice there's also a church questionnaire. So the churches that don't have a pastor, we ask them to complete a questionnaire as well. I encourage you to look at that. And really what we're trying to do is help people with a similar mindset, similar philosophies, to be able to get on the same page and find one another, because we can't lose any more pastors. We have to take advantage of what we've got and use that particular resource well. I encourage you to also talk to Dr. Danny Baer about some of the results of the ordination survey of the presbytery boards. Presbytery boards, we need you to be presbytery boards, straight up. We need you to take seriously when you ordain someone, when you license someone. We need you to follow up with people, to work with people. That's your God-given responsibility, and we need you to take that seriously, because you have a major role in what happens with this particular problem. So you'll see us putting out some best practices. You'll see us putting out some things that other associations are doing, so people can use that as models. But in this day and time, we need to be very effective in what we're doing on our presbytery boards, because that's really where it all starts. What's coming? In August, we're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to churches. So we're going to ask all of our churches, we're asking you right now, take the time, if you've not done it, to look at where you're at. What's the strengths of your church? What's the weaknesses? What opportunities do you have? And what threats are you facing? And we've got a little webinar. It's going to be live with Brother Clint Morgan, August 19 at 11 a.m. Central Time. So we encourage you to put that on your calendar, plan to look at that. It'll be recorded so you can go back and look at it later. I will say, if you have questions you want us to talk about on that, just send it to questions@nafwb.org and we'll do that. So we're going to do that in August, and then in September, we're going to really start focusing on 3 for 30, kind of like we did with Jeremiah 29 last fall. So our people are going to focus on something. If we do not get them focused on something positive, they're going to focus on something negative, okay? So we want to get all of our folks, if possible, in September focusing on reaching people. So you're going to see podcasts and memes and these infographics and so forth, just like Jeremiah 29, where we focus on reaching people who struggle with same-sex attraction, reaching people that are in prison, and a number of other things. It'll be the whole week of September. Then when we get to October, we'll focus on training discipling, just like we did with Jeremiah 29. So Monday you've got the podcast, Tuesday infographic, Thursday the verse, and so forth. And we do have some ideas. Maybe your church could do a disaster response training with Master's Men, and so you could sign up and do that. Maybe you could take advantage of some of the workshops that the Music Commission and the Media Commission, of course you've got to put that in today, but anyway, maybe you could take advantage of that. We are going to bring up at the Leadership Conference, maybe folks are interested in the International Training Alliance, something that IM is heavily involved in, and so maybe that's something that you would like to do. November, we'll focus on give, and then we're going to ask you to send anything that you're doing to us. Send us pictures, send us little descriptions. We're going to promote it, so if you'll send that to us at questions@nafwb.org, we'll do that. Please plan to join us December the 6th through the 7th for the Leadership Conference. We'll have Dr. Tom Rayner again. He'll be doing the 2 evening sessions. We'll have a couple of, we're going to have some panels after each particular session. We'll have a lot of emphasis on Reach, Train, Give, and we will have a Spanish section as well, and the Rayner stuff on Monday night and Tuesday night will be translated in Spanish, just like what we're doing with the business and our other things as well. And then please give. You probably know about the Together Way Trust. We've got to get smart about our giving. So I encourage you to think about giving to the Together Way Trust. If you give to the Together Way Trust, you give a gift that will continue to reap dividends until Jesus Christ returns. You know how a trust works. You put money in it. The money stays there. the interest off the money is used for ministry. And so if you've read the brochure about the Together Trust, this gift that was given by the Worthingtons' mom and dad is still there, still earning interest. Back in 1982, they gave it, and to this day, it still benefits ministries. So our directors decided that we want to set a goal of having $5 million in that particular trust. The skinny cows are coming. And so we want to put money away in this trust that will help us as we deal with perhaps all kinds of difficulties that will come in a different governmental setting, perhaps in the future. Whatever happens, we know that God can use His money in a wonderful way, and this is a way of trying to do that. And then how about helping us out? So the only way you give to the executive office is if you participate in the co-op, you give to the Together Way plan, you designate money straight to the executive office, or you participate in the rest of the family offering. Those are the only mechanisms by which we receive resources. So how about taking the time to take up an offering for us September 26th? It doesn't just benefit us, it benefits WNAC, it benefits Vertical 3, the foundation, the rest of the commissions and so forth, but we would really appreciate that. I'm going to ask Mr. Terry Hill if he will to come and give our financial report.
Good afternoon. I'm going to present the Executive Office, which starts on page 13, the Building Services Report, which starts on page 36, and one magazine that starts on page 48. Each of these reports, the independent auditor's report is an unmodified report, unqualified report, if you will. It says that in our opinion, the financial position and the results of operation are fairly stated in all material aspects. That's as good as it gets from the auditor. I'm going to go through the statement of financial position or balance sheet in a very summary manner. Executive Office, cash, $632,000, which is up $282,000. And we'll talk about why that occurred momentarily. Now, the next number is a little discouraging. Fraudulent banking activities, if you'll see in your report. We had a fraud at the Executive Office and Building Services that was outside of our office. Somebody in Memphis forged checks, cash checks, to the tune of $120,000 between the two organizations. The bank did not catch it. The bank was responsible. All that money has been returned. $19,000 executive was returned after year end. Building Services had $93,000. That money was returned after year end. It was criminals can do amazing things. We have no debt, Executive Office. There's no debt anywhere. No debt on executive, no debt on Building Services, no debt on one magazine. Net assets, that's net worth. That's what we have stored for future activities. Executive Office has net worth, net assets of $658,000. Which is up $225,000. Page 15 speaks to where these numbers come from. Statement of activities, which is the statement of profit and loss, and changes in net assets. As Eddie said, the overall giving is down to the co-op program. As you can see on the report, overall giving is down $140,000. Only affected the Executive Office by negative $2,000 the way the percentages work. In 2020, we did not have a full convention. The General Board met only Net results of that meeting in Nashville, Tennessee was positive of $33,000 because we didn't have all the expenses that we incur in a normal basis. If you look at page 16, which is the statement of functional expenses, you'll see expenses have decreased by $375,000 for the year. We had non-operating income from the stimulus loan forgiveness. If you'll see note 11, it'll explain that a bit, of $56,000. We borrowed the money at 1%. We met the requirements for the loan to become a grant, and it was forgiven. And we have that in building services and one magazine also. Notes of the financial statements, the significant notes, note 2 is liquidity. We have liquidity of $642,000 to carry forward to future periods, to this period, I should say, 2021. We spoke a little bit about the fraudulent banking activities. That's note 3. Please read that. Note 10 is the detail of the gifts. Note 11 speaks to the grant and how the forgiveness of the grant and why. And note 12 is the pandemic and why the financial statements are not comparative with prior periods for profit and loss because of the pandemic. Building service, as I said, starts on page 36. Balance sheet's 37. Cash, $305,000, down $38,000. But if the fraud had not occurred, we would have been up some $60,000. That money, as I said, was recovered the following period in 2021. We have investments of $281,000, which produced gains of $26,000. Those investments are with the Board of Retirement. Accounts payable of $23,000 was from a leadership conference, which was paid the following month in January. Net assets, building services, $696,000, which is an increase, of $72,000. You can pretty much set your watch on the operations of building services and one magazine. We pretty much know within 5% what we're going to do from year to year. We had a stimulus loan forgiveness of $26,000. I'm sorry, a gain of $26,000 from the investment and a stimulus forgiveness of $14,000. Liquidity in note 2 on the financial statements, $508,000. Significant notes, note 3 is investments. Note 4 speaks to the fraud. And again, note 10 speaks to the stimulus. One magazine starts on page 48. 49 is the balance sheet. $97,000 cash, down about $3,600. Investments, $296,000, up $11,000, which is a gain from the current that year's operations. And again, those investments were in Board of Retirement. Net assets, $401,000. We had a loss for the year of $5,600. That was a planned loss. One magazine gave a rebate to each of the participants in the magazine of 15%, which amounted to $65,000. So without that rebate, we would have continued on a profitable path. Investment gains, $11,000, as I said. Loan stimulus, $15,000. And again, this one you can also set your watch for year to year as to what's going to happen. You pretty much know within a very small percentage what it's going to be. Note 2's liquidity, $368,000. Investments is note 4. We had no fraud in this report. Revenues and rebate, as we just spoke, of $65,000 is note 5. The stimulus loan forgiveness is note 10. At the appropriate time, I'll be glad to answer questions, and that concludes my report.
I'm going to ask Glenn Polston, Edwin Hayes, and Mike Wade, if they will, to come to the podium. Last year, Glenn Polston kind of retired from the executive committee. So we have a plaque here in appreciation for service on the executive committee 2012 to 2020 for the National Association of Free Baptists. Here we go. And Brother Edwin is about to retire, so in appreciation for his work from 2015 to 2021 for the National Association of Free Baptists. And Brother Mike is not retiring yet. However, his term has ended for the Executive Committee, 2007 to 2021. Thank you, Brother Mike.